Hello, and welcome to Cooking Through the Collection. My name is Melissa, and I'm a librarian and home cook. I do a lot of research when wanting to expand my repertoire of cooking, so I've challenged myself to walk through the stacks of my library's cookbook collection and grab things I've never tried before. So let's see what's been going on recently. I've been very busy with work, and a few weeks ago, I fell and sprained my ankle outside of a pie shop. I know that sounds really cartoonish, but it was a pie shop. I fell outside, I've sprained my ankle, nothing's broken, nothing seems to be horribly torn, which is good because I had ankle surgery on this one. But it's definitely hampered my ability to cook, and Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and I'm on crutches. I can put weight on my foot, but it's going to be hard to cook for 14 people when you can't stand, go back and forth, carry things, take things in and out of the oven. As you can imagine, I'm not going to be cooking a new recipe in this episode. But what should I do? I was trying to think about that, and so I wanted to talk about the Thanksgiving traditions that we have in my family's household. My family has a lot of traditional items that they make for our Thanksgiving meal, and finding out the history of them has been interesting over time. It used to be exclusively my mother cooking the meal with my dad baking bread to now me cooking a lot of the meal, my father cooking a little bit more of it. So things have transitioned over the past 40 plus years. But it's definitely been interesting to see the origins of some of these recipes and then how myself as a home cook over time and being a librarian as well and researching has modified them and I think made our Thanksgiving a little bit better. I learned that a lot of our Thanksgiving recipes, their bones of them at least, are from a vintage Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook from the 60s. My mother received this cookbook when my brother was born. And it's gingham, it says Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook. And it's kind of a binder inside. And my mom's cookbook, of course, has all her handwritten notes with all the modifications that she's made over the years. And I really wanted my own copy, but I can't take hers. So I went onto eBay and found one that's from the same time period, and it has someone else's notes in it, which is really cool to see, so I can enjoy other things that they've made. This is really broken down by lots of little tabs with things that you can make as a new home cook. It's definitely geared towards a kind of young mom type of situation. But a lot of our recipes actually originally stem from there. One is the savory celery stuffing, and it's pretty basic. My mom didn't really have any modifications to this. It's dry bread cubes, onion, celery, salt, pepper, poultry seasoning, rubbed sage, and melted butter and broth. Very straightforward. It's good. It gives you that kind of home feeling. It's better than stovetop brand stuffing. Don't get me wrong. I love me some stovetop stuffing. My dad even eats it uncooked. Tastes like croutons. Anyway. And then the other one that is one of my favorites that's on the Thanksgiving table is a sausage and apple stuffing. And it has sweet Italian sausage. My hometown has multiple amazing Italian butchers, and this one place has the best Italian sausage, hands down. I don't really like it from anywhere else. I'm very picky, but uses that. Granny Smith apples, chopped onions, salt, pepper, water, breadcrumbs, noted with my mom's note dryer. So she usually made her breadcrumbs, but that's not always possible. And it says cracker crumbs, and my mom's note here is extremely critical. I think it does change the game on the texture of the stuffing. We use matzah. And I think it does taste different. A matzah cracker crumb is different than like a saltine or water cracker. Actually, it's probably more like a water cracker. Those are our two stuffing side dishes. The other recipes, my mom's pumpkin pie recipe is also based out of the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. Her note is to double the spices in the recipe. And I think this is why I don't like pumpkin pie anywhere else. My mom's recipe uses double the cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove that this recipe does. She also doesn't use cream in her recipe. She uses evaporated milk, which, while it greatly reduces calories, it still keeps the texture and that thickness that you need for custards, and it works really well. She also uses it in her quiche. Yay, Mom, for the life hack. The other recipes go into different paths. I'm going to tell you the story about my mom's apple mince pie. So my father loves mince pie. And one time she was making it for my dad. And she had a deep dish pie crust and the jar of mincemeat barely came up halfway up the pan, which, as you know, is just going to look sad. What she did was she chopped up apples. She sliced them really thinly, kind of fanned them through, and then put the mincemeat on top. So now it's a mince apple pie. We also use Applejack brandy, which I didn't know until a few years ago. It's actually made in New Jersey, where I'm from. So that's kind of cool. From the 1700s. It's absolutely delicious. And we joke that you have to put so much alcohol in it. It's like the movie State Fair. I don't know how many of my listeners will get the State Fair reference, but hey, I'll give it a shot. And I've added lemon zest over time and everything to kind of brighten it up. Now we get into crusts and the rest of the pies. My husband doesn't like pumpkin, and he didn't really like mince. I do make 2 different kinds of apple pie. His favorite is the Dutch apple pie, and I will share this in the show notes. It's actually the filling I use. The recipe is from allrecipes.com, and it's a Dutch apple with oatmeal streusel. I love streusel where it's like big, gigantic pieces. They're not these little cohesive crumbs. I like the irregularity and the differences in texture. I make mine a little bit more chunky, but apples, flour, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, butter, flour, all of those things, oats, lemon zest. It's absolutely delicious. It does stick to the pan. You need to put a tray under it with aluminum foil because it will overflow. Totally worth it. Highly recommend. The other one that I also enjoy is the deep dish apple pie by Arda Garten. Definitely check it out. It is less sweet. It is a 2-crust pie. It is absolutely delicious. Might be better for people who don't like the sweet as much, or maybe they can't have oats or things like that. I will also link that in the show notes. My mom used to always buy crust, and there was no shame in that. Frozen crust can be very good. And back in the day, you couldn't get roll-out crusts like Pillsbury, which also very good if you have the option. The Annie's is okay. It's not great. So I started to make my own pie crust, and it is actually Ida Garten's recipe for perfect pie crust. It's made in the food processor, and for someone that has really warm hands and has always tried to rub butter into flour, it has not worked well for me. My hands are just so warm. I have to put my hands in ice water to be able to work with something so it doesn't melt so quickly. Her recipe uses the food processor. It's much easier to control. That way, it goes a lot faster. You do have to be careful because that faster can backfire you when you're adding ice water, but I think it's totally worth it. That really covers kind of our desserts and sides. We usually have some sort of salad with different options that people put on. Nuts, dried fruit, fresh fruit. There's this really nice olive oil and vinegar shop that is in my hometown, and we get stuff there, and we do a blood orange and cranberry pear dressing with mustard to emulsify it. We also do some other usually cooked green vegetable. It could be green beans, asparagus. My mother-in-law makes a baked sweet potato dish. It's pureed sweet potatoes, butter, and kind of a cinnamon and nut topping. It's not too sweet, which is why I think my mom likes it, but it still has sweetness. And my dad would only eat sweet potatoes smothered in marshmallows, but he'll eat this recipe. You can find a few recipes like that. It's just pureed sweet potatoes with butter and kind of a little bit of a streusel topping. Absolutely love it. It's one of those things that we have to make sure my mother-in-law makes extras just for us to bring home. My favorite new side is, full disclosure, I did like the jellied cranberry sauce as a kid. That's a nostalgia thing more than a taste thing. But cranberries really are helpful to give to these dishes when you're having lots of heavy side dishes, and turkey can be bland. It doesn't have to be. I found this recipe. It's also Ida Garten. I stand Ida Garten. I know she's a bit of a character apparently in real life, but her recipes always work. They're clearly well tested. Her cranberry fruit conserve was a game changer. It's the only way that some of my family members will actually eat cranberries. It's cranberries, sugar, a tart apple. I grew up with Granny Smith, but depending on whatever tart cooking apple you have, an orange, a lemon. The recipe calls for raisins, but I use chopped figs because I have family members who absolutely hate raisins. And chopped pecans. You basically have all the chopped stuff put in, you simmer it with the cranberries, you wait till the cranberries come to a boil and start popping, and all the sugar, it's a 1 3/4 cup sugar, breaks it down, and then after it cools down, it comes this really jammy, preservy, really delicious thing. It works on bread, it works on the meat. I have to make extra of that as well for my parents and my mother-in-law. So let's talk about the turkey. My mother used to make the whole turkey in one whole thing. One year, the oven went out, so we had to cook it somewhere else. That was fun. But the turkey takes up a lot of space, and I like turkey stuffed in the bird. We always made sure it was to temperature. But what we found a better way to cook a turkey is actually through Serious Eats with a term called spatchcocking, which is cutting the backbone out of the turkey, or actually any poultry. I've done this with chicken too and done this on the grill. And then it lays flat. When you think about the problem with a turkey is there's this kind of cavern and shape, and then parts, the breast will cook too fast. My mom and I used to start the bird face down and then halfway flip it over, which was always cartoonish because usually something would happen. Something would rip, something would fall. Never completely dropped it, so I guess that's good. But this spatchcocking changes that. It makes it completely level, all about one thickness, and it cooks exponentially faster. So for a whole turkey, it cooks in 50 minutes at a 450-degree oven. You're not sitting for 7 hours and watching a behemoth. And also, you can cook 2 smaller birds so you don't buy this 28-pound monster that doesn't fit in your oven and takes 5 days to defrost. We really enjoyed that method. We put the stuffing and roast vegetables in a pan and then put a cookie rack. And then we put the turkey on top of that so there's space between, but we still get the dripping, so it still has that inside the bird taste, but it's not sitting directly on top of it. And that recipe from Serious Eats actually has a rub that's a maple sage turkey rub and glaze. And as you can imagine, it has maple sugar, brown sugar, maple syrup, butter, orange peel, black pepper. It's absolutely lovely. And then I also use the backbone and all of the organs that come with the turkey, and I slow cook them with carrots, onion, celery, black peppercorns. Really slowly bubble it throughout most of the day for the cooking, longer than the turkey goes in now. And then I pull that out, I skim off the fat, and I make the gravy off that stock. We don't make a gravy that has a roux thickening, so it doesn't have flour or butter in it. We use cornstarch. We prefer that texture. It's also a little bit lower in calories. Again, grew up in a very calorie-conscious household. But the thing is, it's a little bit more finicky. That's pretty much our main meal. If we have family visiting, other dishes show up. My sister-in-law brings something called prasnos, which is Greek-inspired. It's a spinach and cheese souffle. My husband has decided this year that he wants to learn how to make mashed potatoes. We did a test run training with him. He's going to make them one time before, and then we're going to have them on Thanksgiving Day. Mashed potatoes are one of those things that I don't have time to babysit them, plus all the other things that have to be done. Now you're thinking, Melissa, how are you going to cook all this on one leg? That's a great question. I'm actually going to start cooking on the weekend before, where I'm recording now. I'm going to be making the cranberry conserve because that can really sit. It lasts a long time. There's so much sugar in it, that thing is not going bad. I'll make the pie crust in advance too. Pie crusts do better anyway when they've had a chance to hydrate. So that's when all the moisture and the flour have gotten to sit and hang out together. It makes for a better pastry on any recipe. So making it a few days in advance is okay. And then I'm hopefully going to do some of my measuring and chopping of all my vegetables at once and like portioning them out. And I'm going to ask for a lot of help from everyone that's coming and visiting. My dad makes this bread, which I probably should have mentioned earlier, but it's an important family tradition. My father's family is Serbian, and they make this bread called česnica, and it is a holiday bread. It's traditionally had at Christmas, but we have it at Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'll give you an idea. It's half butter, half lard. I joke that it's self-buttering bread. It's this flaky, really indulgent bread, and it toasts up well too. And my dad bakes it for Christmas. It has a coin in it. If you find the coin when you pull the loaf apart, you have a good year. Thanksgiving, though, doesn't have a coin. It's just sliced up and put on the plate. That cranberry conserve right on top of it's lovely. And you only get in the holiday season in my family's household. I've never seen anyone else make it before. I have watched my father made it. I have assisted him. I've never made it myself. Admittedly, he does use shortening because, getting lard for a while, it just didn't happen. I know this isn't the most exciting episode. I'm not trying a new cookbook. You're not hearing me go, and, set the house on fire. But I wanted to touch base. I hope that you all have a safe holiday season wherever you are. The world's a little chaotic right now. I hope you can reach out to some of your food traditions that make you feel comforted wherever you may be. Thank you for joining me on Cooking Through the Collection. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. You can visit the website for more information at cookthecollectionpod.com. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook at cookthecollectionpod. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and happy holiday cooking.